I'm so pleased that Boyd Matheson could join us on the program today. I've known Boyd in many different capacities for many years now, and very anxiously engaged in politics. You've worked on campaigns, you've worked within administrations, you've been chief of staff, you've been a consultant to various campaigns, now the president of the Sutherland Institute. And we've all been watching this Bears Ears thing unfold very, very carefully. And we're all just kind of holding our breath, especially after the experience we had at the tail end of the Clinton years with Grand Staircase. The PLI is in play right now. Jason Chaffetz and Congressman Bishop and others from the state of Utah have been shepherding that very carefully. The outdoor retailers, and I want to make this very clear. We love these guys. This is one of the biggest conventions ever. We love having these folks that have been with us now for about 20 years. We appreciate what they do for our economy. We appreciate what they do for outdoor recreation. But they have taken a stand for, and it is absolutely their right, to take a stand for the Bears Ears Monument. But, Boyd, you sent us some things. As they have had some of the events and what was supposed to be open gatherings to discuss Bears Ears, have they been open?
Not really. Well, they're open as long as you're in agreement with the monument. So unfortunately, they had a press conference yesterday. It was supposed to be open to the public, no badge required, no credential required, and turned out that just really was not the case. There were some of the great people, some of the Navajos that actually live near the Bears Ears in San Juan County had come up, and they were actually denied access because they were against the monument. And it turned into a kind of an interesting little back and forth, as usually happens when people are trying to exert their First Amendment rights. But
yeah, it is interesting because you passed along to me a little story of what happened from one of these individuals, and they said that they had heard about it and they decided that they would make some signs, and they were wearing T-shirts that opposed the monument, but they were turned away. At the same time, while people that were wearing T-shirts that supported the monument just walked in.
That's right.
And so you kind of wonder about that. And did these folks ultimately get in?
They ultimately got in towards the end there. And but again, the irony was here you had these two young sisters, one a teenager, one in her early 20s, trying to get in. They've been very vocal that, hey, we live here and our voices are not being heard. A lot of the big money interest voices are being heard. Ours is not. And as the security guard said, you have to have a badge. Someone walked by with one of the pro monument T-shirts, and so these fantastic Navajo girls said, "How are you getting in?" And she says, "Oh, I work for SUA. They asked us to come."
Oh, there you go. This is where we need that great movie soundbite, and you can get it from 3 different movies: The Treasure of the Sierra Madre or The Three Amigos. Badges.
I
don't need no stinking.
Don't need no stinking badges. Yeah,
exactly. So
and the amazing thing was they then asked the security guard. They said, "So if we go out and change and put on one of those T-shirts, can we get in?" And he said, well, basically.
Oh, gee. Okay.
So, and unfortunately, it misses the whole thing that the most important thing is that we're hearing from the people who actually live there. You talked about the process earlier, and that's the challenge. And if it's just being crammed down our throats as a state, but particularly San Juan County, this is the poorest county in Utah. It is one of the most economically depressed in the country. And to have some folks that are who make more money themselves than the entire county will make in probably several years, is a little bit of a tough one.
You know, and for some of those from the outside, I can understand where they're coming from. They want to preserve this beautiful place. It is a beautiful place.
Should. Yeah.
They want to watch out for the indigenous peoples. I absolutely get that. But how about actually talking, not just to Native Americans, but the Native Americans who actually live there, work there, want to worship there, and what a monument would mean for them. And we do have a little bit of a legacy here because we now look at like Garfield County and others, and you look what Grand Staircase. Now, should parts of Grand Staircase have been preserved? Most of us say yeah. You know, should it have been a gazillion acres? What are we talking here, 1.6?
Almost 2 million acres.
Yeah.
1.9.
And so you add Grand Staircase to what could be Bears Ears. We're talking areas that are bigger than 2 or 3 of our states.
That's right.
Put together. When you talk Rhode Island, you talk. I remember I actually went online and I looked at what the actual acreage was. We're in Bears Ears alone. We're talking an area half the size of Vermont.
Yeah.
Grand Staircase is bigger than Rhode Island, almost as big as Maryland. And you go, that's what we're talking about here. I mean, let's put this in perspective. And then you look at what it does to the local economy. I know I know some of the folks in Garfield County very well, at Bryce Canyon and at Ruby's Inn. I know the former mayor of Tropic. He's been a dear friend of mine for years and years. Talk to them about the Garfield economy, and talk to them about the opportunities that not only have dried up with federal regulation in general, but because of Grand Staircase specifically.
That's right, yeah. And to me, there's two really critical components to that. There's one, there is kind of the hypocrisy of let's make this a more wealthy person's playground,
right,
versus somebody's hometown. And that's a real challenging thing, where you do see a lot of people benefiting, except for those who actually live there. You also have this notion, and Secretary Jewell went up on this in terms of we need to protect the artifacts and so on. And of course, everybody wants that.
Sure.
The hypocrisy of that is kind of interesting too, though, because there's no way to walk where the artifacts are. There's no way to ride an ATV or even a horse into those places. The only way you can get there is by using a lot of the products from a lot of the people who are proponents of the monument. And it's a little bit of a hypocrisy there to say, wait a minute, I think there is a responsible way, and we do need to make sure we don't let the strident voices at both ends prevent us from getting to the real solution. Everybody wants good stewardship of the land, but the process matters. The process really matters, and I think as we have, as we've talked about before, to me the biggest problem in all of these is not conflict. Often it's collusion, and it's big government, a lot of promise that we're going to take care of it. I read through this morning that there is a backlog of services that need to be provided that is somewhere between 12 and 18 billion between the Forest Service and the Park Service.
That's right.
And so when people say, hey, the federal government can take care of it better, they're already 18 billion behind.
That's right.
So in terms of security for artifacts, good stewardship of the land, I don't really see that happening. And so those are the discussions I think we need to have.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we've done shows on that, the wear and tear and the stress and the backlog of things that we need to do, everything from trail maintenance to safety issues to maintaining lodges and signs and all kinds of things, parking. There are big issues right now about even the overcrowding and the overpopulation of visitors. You know, since we decided we didn't want all those vehicles going into Zion National Park, now we bus them in. At least in the old days, we could tell when the parking lots were filled. Now the buses just roll and roll and roll and disgorge all of these wonderful people who want to see what we have loved for so many years. And now it's like you're basically on a pack animal train. You're on a caravan of humankind up to Angel's Landing.
Yeah, and it's amazing that again, this was the one component, and with the retailer's press conference yesterday that was a little tone deaf and tin-eared, was, we want to be able to have everyone enjoy this, and while they can go enjoy it with an AEI outfitter for $10,000 and go through, they want the rest of us to be on the pack animal bus with 100 other really sweaty tourists going to just specific points. And so it's it really is, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure that it is our land. Let's make sure that all the people have access in the right way, that we have the right stewardship set up in terms of how do we preserve and protect these things, and most important, let's make sure that those, especially those tribes that live there, really have a voice.
And that's the key. The tribes that live there. People will be quoting, they'll saying, well, the Navajo this and this group of, and you go, where do they live? Well, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Well, what about the tribes? What about the factions? What about the groups that actually live in Utah, make their living in Utah, see these as sacred lands where they worship and commune with deity? The people that live, the native people that live in Utah, boy, I'll tell you, they are very distressed about this.
They are, and theirs is the voice that really needs to be heard. They should be first, last, and always in every discussion, and regardless of what side of the issue you're on, they need to be heard, because it is, if you can take a lot of things away, and as we've talked before, that we've had a lot of broken promises with the Native Americans,
Right.
and this should not be one of them.
Well, and sadly, I think some of them have some misperceptions and have been told some things that aren't absolutely
That's
true.
right.
In our KSL combined editorial board meeting with the Deseret News and so on, we had some of these individuals, very well-meaning individuals, who said, well, we want to protect our right to gather the firewood. We want to protect our right to go out there and graze our cattle. We want to protect our right to have access to this and do it under certain circumstances and so on. And I can remember after that conversation, we all looked around the table and we said, aren't many of the things that were just discussed, wouldn't they be very difficult to do within a national monument?
That's right. Almost impossible.
Yeah. And outlawed.
Yeah.
And then when you confront people with that, they say, well, we're going to ask for special dispensation and waivers and everything else. And boy, let me tell you, here in Utah, we've had firsthand experience with the waivers and everything, and good luck.
That's right. Just watching the grazing go down in the grand staircase is a good example of that.
Exactly. Boyd, I appreciate you joining us, and thanks for coming out to Hale Center Theater.
Hey, it's always great. This is what makes America really great. These are the things, community things like Hale Center Theater matter, and that's what gives me hope. While the political process, I don't have a lot of confidence in at the moment, I do have confidence in communities like we have here in Utah, and Hale Center Theater is a perfect example of
this
that.
Great community theater, and sometimes, community theater, this is world-class theater.
It is.
Boyd, thanks so much.
Thanks, Doug.
Boyd Matheson, the president of the Sutherland Institute, with us.